All right, freestyle version. I resisted the urge to use rulers to break up the space a little bit because I wanted you to have one border at least that didn't have any ruler work in it. So all I've done is I've got my miter line here all the way out to the edge, and 4 inches in from the corner, minus the ½ inch there, about 4 inches in is where I put my dot, and I'm just going to do a nice little leaf out there. I'm going to do a little tiny leaf in here, and then we're going to do curls and leaves with a nice undulating spine all the way across. Now the way I'm going to work this is I'm going from my top left corner across and down, and then from the bottom right hand corner I will go across and up. So it's actually the 2 corners on the diagonal are your 2 starting points, and we're just going to work it from there. Now I didn't use anything to draw my spine out here. I didn't use any rulers or anything. I just did a nice soft undulating line. You don't need always to have this perfect. You don't actually have to stitch out this line if you don't want to. I'm going to do it on one of them, and then I'm not going to do it on another one, just so you can see the different ways to do it. If you are going to do the spine first, I'm going to start way out here in the edge, and I'm going to draw my way back. And again, I've got my line stitched, or I've got my line drawn, sorry, but that doesn't mean that I'm necessarily going to stick straight to it. I want my curves to be soft and curvy. Start my machine, and I'm going to stay fairly close, but I want it to be soft and gentle. There's my spine. All right, we're going to work off that. So I'll cut my thread at the end here. I'm going to work in manual mode because that's how I'm happy. I'm going to do a nice big leaf down here. That gives me my bottom. And then I'm going to do a smaller leaf up here. Now, my line's disappeared. So I want you to give yourself a miter line, because you need to make sure that when you're doing either side of this spine coming this way, that you don't bring these over to here or don't bring those over to there. So make sure you've got that little chalk line in there to keep you on your own side. In the center, I'm going to do a little leaf as well. I'm going to pretend that this is stitched for now. There we go. So I've got a leaf there and a leaf there, and now I'm going to start stitching. So I generally tend to start with a curl. You don't have to start with a curl. You can start with a leaf. And there's no rhyme or reason to this. We're going to use both. So if you feel like you want to put a leaf somewhere, do it. If you want to put a curl somewhere, do it. Try not to get into the curl, leaf, or 2 curls and a leaf, 2 curls and a leaf. Just let it be organic. As I'm stitching through it, I'll explain where some of these shapes are going to look better, but just let it flow. Okay, here we go. So I've got my first curl. I'm going to do ribbon curls, and there's my first leaf. When I do my first one here, I'd like it to be a curl, so I need to be up here. So I'm going to work up this side of the spine just a little bit longer, just to get me there, and then I'm going to do this side. Nice leaf. The leaves and the curls are worked off the spine exactly the same way that we were doing the feathers. You still need to merge on and off. Make sure you do some little ones and some big ones. Mix them up. The nice thing with the curls is they will actually reach way out and over top. Let them fall out and over top of things. And you want to basically stay working both sides of the spine relatively close together. Not every leaf needs to be perfect. Let some of them flop over, some of them flip up. Keep it nice and, you know, organic. Let them all be different. I promise you that it'll look great in the end. You could throw in one of those little things every now and then. That looks good. I'm going to put a big one over here because I want it to reach all the way over. And then maybe I'll lay a leaf on top of that. Notice that when I'm stitching this, I'm doing the underside of the design first and then coming over top of the design to come back to the spine. Under, over. That way, as I'm quilting, I'm working up the spine and I'm not driving over the spine a lot, going back and forth, and that's what helps keep it nice and clean here. If you're doing over top and then coming underneath, then you're driving up and over. You know, if you've got a really thin thread, then maybe it's not such a big deal, but if you're using Glide or So Fine or King Tut or any of those other threads, you will run into a very messy spine very quickly. Sometimes have a small leaf like that one. It doesn't come right to the edge. It doesn't matter. It doesn't have to. Because when I do the next thing off of that side, I'm going to do a nice big curl and flop it right over top so it's like sitting underneath. And I want you to make sure that you're filling that space. You need to make sure you're coming right to the edge or very close to. You want to fill the area with our design and our thread. We've got a lot of space here. You want to make sure you fill it. It always looks nicer if you've got a nice wide border like this. You know, if it gets too wide on you, then find a way to break it up with the ruler. This very well could have been broken up with a ruler to make this design smaller. I probably would have liked it better, but I was trying not to give you any ruler work for this particular border. I like a little leaf with a curl over top. I think it looks good. A little curl. Let them all be a little bit different. It's just going to make everything a little more interesting to look at. The other thing it does for you as well is if you've got one or two leaves or a little curl or something that doesn't quite look right, it's going to blend in much nicer if everything's a little bit different than if they're all regimented and stuck together and there's no variation in anything. Now when I get to this side, I've also got my miter line up to the corner. Hopefully you can see it. It's right here. So when you come to this side, you want to make sure that these motifs don't come past here, so that when we do this one, these ones are going to come right to about there too. Okay? Curl it over. Curl. Leaf. Now we're going to need something that's going to go all the way out to that corner. So I'm going to do a curl and a leaf here. And another leaf. And then maybe a backwards curl right there, and bring it in. Gosh, that looks good. Oh, I like it. There we go. So there's your border. All the way to there. Now when I do this corner all the way down, personally I work in my quiltable space. So I'm only going to work in the area that I have, and that will get me down to the end. If some of you decide you want to take your quilts, do your horizontal borders top and bottom, and then take your quilt off and turn it, that is entirely up to you. I tried it twice, and the only reason I tried it a second time was to make sure that I really did hate it as much as I hated it the first time. But there are lots of long armers who turn their borders all the time, and that's the way they do it, and that's how they're happy. So, hey, if it works for you, that's awesome. All right, I'm going to do the border coming down this way now. Okay, we're going to do the bottom right corner now, and I'm going to give you something a little bit different. So this time I'm not going to stitch out my spine first. I've got it chalked out just so I know where I'm going, and I'll stitch out the motif without doing the spine first, and then we'll come back and finish it. So here I thought instead of doing leaves at the bottom for our little motif here, we could maybe do a little curl or something. So I'm about the same. I'm 4 inches in. Don't get hung up on that number. It's just I like this part of it to be bigger and more solid, and then this is the smaller area. So let's go. So that's how I'm going to start it, with that little curl. That's really pretty. I like that. All right. And here we go. Cut my thread. If I can find my scissors. There we go. And then up here, I'm just going to I will put a little tiny leaf right here. So that time, I did the curl coming out and up this way. So we're going to just mix and match them here. So I'm watching my chalk line. And we're actually not going to have a spine this time at all. We're going to make them blend. All I'm doing is following the chalk line and the basic idea. Again, mixing and matching. I don't have a rhythm going on here or a pattern. You don't have to do this in manual mode if you don't want to. Nothing wrong with using your regulator. The regulator is nice because it gives you the option to think if you're not sure where to go, or what design you want to do next. It gives you that minute to kind of hover and hesitate and think about what you want to do. I think leaves and curls are my favorite. They fit in so many places. Now you can use this same concept with anything. It could be the scimitar feathers, or it could be real feathers, or just curls, or seaweed, or, you know, anything. Doesn't matter what shape it is. It's all the same concept. So I'm basically creating my own spine here as I'm stitching. And any little bits that aren't filled in, the eye will fill in for you. I'm going to stick a little tiny curl right in here because I think I left a little bit too big of a space for my liking. These little backwards curls are a great way to fill the space in without making too big of a curl. If you want something a little bit smaller there, you can use that. But that other little guy will go the opposite way and fill it in for you. Now again, I'm going to go up to the miter line. That goes right up into that corner. And then here we could just lay another leaf down. And maybe one more. Awesome. Awesome sauce. Isn't it pretty? There you go. Now this side, I'm going to work this side up now. And what I'm going to do is work in my quiltable space as I have it. Now when you're doing your quilts, you're probably going to be working this along with the rest of your quilting. Or you can leave them to the end and do them all at the same time. And like I said earlier, you can flip your quilts if that makes you happy. I'm just going to work my way up and advance it forward as I need to. Get rid of all that before it makes a mess. Try not to get too far away from yourself. Otherwise, you're going to create longer paths that you have to go back to catch the other side. Oh, I can't leave that. See, I went in that leaf, I went right over my top of my curl. I'm going to fix that. Work in whatever you want to work in at that moment. If you're feeling leafy, do a leaf. If you feel like it's time for a curl, do a curl. If you feel like you need to work it out a little bit and play around first on paper, go ahead and do that too. It makes you more comfortable. But I promise it'll come out good. Move my quilt forward. Make sure you're staying inside that half-inch line that you've given yourself on the outside. We don't want to have anybody's leaf tips get cut off when the binding goes on. One more advance. There we go. And I just want to point something out to you here at the top. The fact that these two are not symmetrical does not bother me at all. At all, not one bit. I think it looks good and it just makes it look more whimsical. All right. I hope you like the border. It's a very quick way to fill up the space too. Coming down the side, it's going to be the same thing. You're either going to work in your quiltable space or you're going to flip it and do it that way. So there's a bunch of curls all in a row. You could do it that way for sure and do just curls. Nobody says you have to do leaves at all in here. As long as you're filling the space. gonna look good. Go. And then when you get to your spot where you can't reach anymore, you're just going to wind it back. Carry on. That way the leaf looks like it's tucked up underneath the curl. You could add a spike every now and then. That would look good too. These are great for filling in space when you don't really have room for a leaf, or you want to break up something like a curl or a bunch of leaves together. There's another little option for you right there. I love doing them like this. I think I'm going to do the rest of it like that. Let's have a look. Curl with a little leaf stuck on top. Curl, leaf, curl, leaf. That looks really good too. So take any one of those combinations, mix and match them. Try not to get too many in there, just choose a couple. And kind of stick with a plan. And it will look awesome. There we are. So there's lots of options in there for you. Love it. I love these ones right here. Absolutely love those ones there.